Congresswoman, it's always a treat to see you. I thank you for your time. I know that your district, of course, includes El Paso. The city alone handles about $98 billion in annual cross-border trade. How are you seeing this?
Thanks. It's so great to see you, Jose. What's important for the American people to understand is that tariffs are a tax. They're a tax on their goods and what they go to the grocery store to buy. And so as these tariffs ramp up and as there's this erratic, chaotic approach to them, we're not going to see any easing of economic pain, which is what Donald Trump promised American voters, that he would lower costs on day one. But instead, we're going to see the opposite. We're going to see prices go up. And in districts like mine, you mentioned the amount of trade that goes through El Paso. A quarter of our jobs in El Paso are dependent on that cross-border trade and that relationship with Mexico. We are dealing with incredible uncertainty, higher prices. It makes businesses reluctant to make investments. They're unable to plan ahead. And it really does threaten not just our local economy, it will threaten the state of Texas economy and the national economy ultimately.
Congresswoman, and by the way, just some of the cross-border trade that one sees in El Paso is like some of the best stuff. I got to tell you, just the that trade and that familiarity, you know, that exists across the border area. But one of the issues that I know that you've been very focused on over the last couple of years has been the impact of migration to your area and certainly others in the country. That has changed. The fact that President Trump is just recently said that after conversations with Claudia Sheinbaum, the president of Mexico, he's holding back on some tariffs. Do you see there any possibility of progress?
Well, I'll tell you what I'm seeing. Absolutely, you're right. In terms of migration, the numbers are significantly lower, and we know that began under the prior administration, and Mexico was a big part of that and remains a big part of that drop in those numbers. But what we're seeing in my district that is really, really alarming is the use of military resources for Donald Trump's mass deportation plans. And it's bad for a number of reasons. You know, we've seen, for example, Fort Bliss, which is a premier military installation, necessary, vital, key to our national defense. We're seeing the use of C-17s for deportation flights instead of the commercial flights that are that cost taxpayers a whole lot less. We're taking military assets and using them for non-military purposes. And we are urging the administration not to use Fort Bliss and other military installations for deportation camps, which impacts our military readiness, creates a real lack of transparency. Just, it is bad all the way around. And so we, while yes, border apprehensions are down, the mass deportation efforts, particularly in my district with the use of military assets, is very alarming.
I mean, Congresswoman, it's striking to see the numbers. I mean, when we're talking about the last couple of months of the Biden administration, 20 to 30,000 people encountered over the border, and really, right now, it's virtually none. However, maybe the use of military assets has been part of the reason why those numbers have dropped so drastically. But then the question is, the deportation and how the deportation is being carried out that can create in many communities, and I'm thinking of the millions of mixed immigration status families that work and live in our country. It's causing a sense of fear that maybe could be mitigated if things were clearer.
Well, and frankly, I understand the fear. I don't know if you saw the story, but in one of my colleagues' districts, here in Virginia, a U.S. citizen was stopped at gunpoint by ICE, U.S. citizen, but a Latino, and he was questioned, and his citizenship was questioned, and he tried his best to show his ID so that they would understand he was a U.S. citizen. And in the interviews that he gave to local Virginia press, he identified himself as a Trump supporter and a Trump voter, and was shocked that he, a U.S. citizen, had been racially profiled as part of this mass deportation effort. In my own district, a local small business owner, an ICE agent went in and, in an attempt to question the citizenship of people in his place of business. And so the indiscriminate nature of many of these enforcement efforts as part of the mass deportation, this is about everybody. It's not just about mixed status families. It's not just about the undocumented. There's racial profiling that's happening in our country as a result of this, and it should shock no one that instills fear in a lot of Latino communities.
Congresswoman Veronica Escobar, it's always a pleasure to see you. I look forward to visiting with you in the El Paso area very soon. I thank you for being with us.